It is, let me see, it is the 7th, I can't remember now what it is, of March. Anyway, one of those two. Let me just check on my phone. It is March the 10th. And in Florida. So for me, it's 5 p.m. Eastern. And you can see that I have guests on. And those of you who've watched this show before will recognize we have kRAk-ing up. Okay, so here we are, the K and WK. Can you put your hand up, Frosty K? Can you put your hand up, KW? There we are. All right. So it's been a while since we did all of this, but before, I always have to say, well, it'd be good evening to Gregor, who is, even though it looks like there are only 3 of us, there are actually 4 of us. And of course, the back room all stuffed into a chair in the back room. Facilitating, and Chris will be the one who sort of takes your questions and so on. Yes, we will have time for questions and comments as we go along. But for that, before, let me first introduce, these are my 2 British friends, my oldest friends. Not that they're old, you understand, but the 2 of my oldest friends. In the white sweater we have Kay. We're going to call her Frosty. I met Kay, oh gosh, so long ago now. She came to me for a consultation. Did you come to me for a consultation? Is that how I first met you, Frosty?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
And then I went to Hong Kong, where we had ventures. So I went to visit Kay and her kids and her husband, and we had lots and lots. And we've been fast friends ever since. And now, with you, wave Kay.
Which one? Oh, that
one. There's a little, you have to forgive us because there's a little bit of a delay. So far away from us. Usually we don't have delays. Occasionally we do, but it's because there are 3 of us on. There are some little delays, so you'll have to figure out with us because we're just going to be cracking up tonight. Now, let me see. What is the theme? Oh, wait, sorry. Running. So KW, I met Kay, who also came to me lots and lots and lots of years ago. How long is it, Kay, since
82.
82. So that's 40 years ago.
Yeah.
We look a little different now, don't we, 40 years on? But we still beautiful. We're older. Sure that we're wise. So that's part of our subject this morning. Let's go back to Frost. Is it since we've known each other?
Since 1988.
So you're only sort of 6 years apart as far as so we've known each other and been good friends for, let's say, for argument's sake, a year or 2. It's a long time. 40 years is a long time to have a friendship, and I think fair to say a very good friendship. We've had friendships, right?
Yeah.
Say yes. Nod and say yes.
Definitely.
Finally, okay, great. So we thought, and I think in some ways this comes about family earlier on, and for those of you who know me and have kept up with me in the last month, and I never tire of saying this, you will know that my darling boy, my grandson, played at Carnegie Hall. He was invited to play at Carnegie Hall. For those of you who's playing football, was he playing basketball? What was he playing? Well, he was playing the piano, an amazing little maestro. So we've been talking about them, and I've been thinking about what our children and our grandchildren teach us, of course, to teach them. So both Kay's has 2 grandchildren.
Yes.
And Charlotte and Peter, and children, Kay.
Yes.
You do, right? Right, a minute.
Yes.
And are they grandchildren? No, they're grandchildren, are they?
Yes. Peter's children are.
No, he's your son, and his children are
My grandchildren.
Children, not great grandchildren. We don't have great grandchildren, do we? We're not that old. Way. All right. I had to think for a minute. And then you have 3 children, and how many grandchildren?
2.
2 grandchildren.
Yeah.
So we're all the 3 grandparents.
Yeah.
We've kept in touch with each other. We know our kids and grandkids. You know, my daughter and grandson. Thought we'd have a little discussion as to do I teach anything? Do our grandchildren teach us anything? I'm going to go, because I know that you've been thinking about this. We talked about this earlier on. Did you actually, I'm curious, this is for both of you, did you actually, I think of value from your parents, from mothers, let's say from your mothers, that you then were able, did either of you learn anything of value from your mother that you then passed on, or were able to pass on to your children and your... So Frosty, let's have a go.
I think there are a lot of things that you learned from your parents, and sometimes it's on a subconscious level. You don't necessarily think about it, but you take on sort of characteristics, and the way you speak to them sometimes are the way that your parents spoke to you. Having said that, you sometimes consciously don't speak to your children the way your parents speak to you. So each generation takes good things from the parents and bad things and adapts it. And I think that happens with every generation, because nobody gets it 100% right. It's a journey for everybody, and each child is different. So you learn to have to adapt how you are with them to their personalities. Yeah,
I agree. And in a little bit, I'm going to talk about this. Can you think of, it might not be that your mother taught you, but can you think of a lesson that impacted from your mother and then that you've carried on to your kids and your grandkids? Kay, what about you? And your mother, because we're all women here.
Yeah.
I'm talking about your mother. Mo, do you think of anything that you have learned from, that you learned then passed on to your kids?
Yeah.
Or
quite as
helped you?
Yeah, quite instinctively. I remember watching my mother with my brother and sister, and knowing that I could do the same, and did do the same from a very early age. Not quite the same as she did. I remember as a child copying her. And
Was that a
because
good thing?
oh yeah, this is in a good way, in a very, very maternal way. When we were all very young, she was extremely maternal and always was. She had some other issues in her life that didn't involve the children, but as a mother to young children, she was very good. She was very strong, very maternalistic. Yeah, and I do remember thinking about in the small details of things that I remember her getting just right. Yeah. Like everyday small caring things and routines.
Like, give me
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
an example
Example. So
of the
small
care.
things like timings and appointments and manners and always being polite and always wearing clothes in a certain way and things that matched and things that didn't match and things that I really got impatient with as I grew older, but as a little girl I loved. Good shoes and always Clarks and that sort of thing. So standards that she was brought up with that were rigid, absolutely rigid. There were lots of things that I used to think, really, I don't think that's so important. But I remember keeping them on as my girls were growing up, especially with the manners and the very 40s, 50s, 60s. Children must be seen and not heard. I didn't carry that on at all. But that's how we were. I think Kay was the same.
Okay, what about you? We've lost your voice. We can't hear you.
Lost you.
We've lost your voice. Can't hear you. Can check your microphone. Chris, can you help Kay with this?
I think the only thing Kay can do is log off and log back on.
Yeah, that usually works.
Kay, can you log off and then log back on?
Because her internet is not very strong right now, I'm noticing on the,
Wow.
yeah. I know you guys are having storms over in England as well, so maybe that's,
Yeah, lots of
she's
snow.
affected by it.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, while we're waiting for Kay to come back on, and hopefully minutes or so, you were saying, when we about what we learned. There you are. Is that better?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I can't remember what we were saying then.
There was a delay. There's a delay, but we can hear you.
Right.
Saying what, can you give some examples your mother taught you, either good things or not such good things that you either are painting or you specifically did not apply to your parents?
Well, I think like this seen and not heard, I don't think parents from my mum's generation talked to the children in the same way. They didn't, there was a definite parent role and a child role. I think you talk more openly nowadays with your children than you did before. Certain things weren't discussed, I think. So I think,
do you think, and this is a question for both, do you think that the way you brought up your kids, you deal with your grandchildren, do you think it's different?
what, different between the children and the grandchildren?
Yeah.
I think there's a difference in some ways because you, as a parent, you're the sole responsible. Whereas as a grandparent, you have the dipping in and dipping out of responsibility. So I think that makes it easier, because you can pick your times. You don't have to deal with everything. Yes.
Do you think your kids, you still think that the manners are as important to your own kids?
I think they're important. I don't think necessarily they're always enforced in the way that they were when I was younger nowadays. I think there's, and I personally don't think, I think some of that's down to the internet and how people feel I can say what I want now. And so that tips over into the what's acceptable as we would consider rude, whereas probably isn't now. I think that's a big difference.
What about you, Kay?
I think, just picking up from what Kay said, I think majority of people would find that rude, or find younger habits, or not, I shouldn't say younger habits, but the habits on social media as being lax or a little bit freer. I think if individually these people who are behaving the way they do on social media, I think if they were talked to and taken to task, they would agree. But somehow everybody's got a platform and they think it's the given right to be able to say whatever they want to say. I'm astonished and astounded by how people talk to each other and strangers on this platform. And I would never have dared even breathe a thought of those things with my parents and my grandparents and my extended family. I would never have dreamt of it. I would have been shocked.
Do you think you are, let's say, do you think you're lax or you're more easygoing with your grandchildren than you were with your kids?
Definitely.
Can you give us an example?
I don't necessarily think I'm more lax. I think I probably explain a little bit more sometimes. With your kids, you said no or whatever, but I think with children, you explain why you're saying no, and you talk around the whole thing. You have a discussion around it so that they understand a little bit better. And I think that's because of a time constraint. To some extent.
I think as a grandmother, I am more available with fun, and I'm more likely to see the funny side of things, and I'm sure that's not always appropriate. So I have to watch myself and stay in line. But I will be on the floor doing somersaults if I can. And that sort of behavior that I think I was fun with my girls, but I think I was a little bit more rigid, certainly, than I am with the boys. I just laugh all the time because I think they're hysterical.
I'm listening to you both. And I mean, I was brought strict household. And my father, being an army sergeant, had rules. He would make us march around the garden, you know. Left, we'd have to go. Left, and we'd have to chant. Left. Good home, and I left. I had a good home, and I left. And he'd make us march around the garden. You know, he probably was laughing about it, but dare to consider laughing. You just did do. And my mother was say to all of my sisters, my youngest sister, my mother was a bit different than she ever was to me. But I think it's fair to say, as far as us, bringing Samantha up, I hear her, you know, while she was still in the womb, and I can remember, you know, to God or whoever was listening, I want to be better, and how can I be better? And I clearly where I could be better was to make sure that, and I was told this, in fact, it's not enough to love your kids or your grandkids. Absolutely know that you love them. They have to have that certainty. I've never had that certainty. So I tried very hard to make sure, right from conception and through, I tried really, really hard to ensure that Samantha knew that she was well loved, and absolutely knew that her mother would go to battle for her and snuggle her, would, you know, she would always feel safe. And when I look at the way Samantha, my daughter, is with, she does that same thing. She makes him feel safe and loved, and he has, there's not one shadow of doubt his mother loves him 1,000%, and there's not a doubt in his, I mean, we speak he calls me before bedtime every single night, and I've had this thought in my head, you know, this, you know, trying to say to my students, if they don't know it. It's not enough to say I love you. You've got to try in as many ways as you possibly can, because I think our kids do, but from what we say. I think, okay, when you said you know, you watch your mother and you watched your siblings, but I think it's you know, it watching their actions and their reactions that teach us, not what they say to us, but what they do in fact. And that's, I think, you know, how we learn. Such an important thing. And I know, Frosty, you actually said we talked to them more. I think we do talk to our grandchildren. Yes. I certainly feel, you know, I saw a movie years ago. Oh yes, I can remember. It was Thoroughly Modern Millie. It's an old movie, right? There was a grandmother, and the grandmother happened to have lots of money and so on, and she would off, and she'd take them in helicopter rides, or she'd take them to and what have you, and I remember, you know, she said, I can spoil them, I can do what I like with them, I can get what I want, because at the end of the day I just hand them back to the parents I picked up kids. And I remember watching that movie. Yeah, like that, because we can spoil our kids, our grandkids, because we don't really have to put them to bed at night. We don't necessarily have to deal with all the stuff that I think that we can spoil them more than we perhaps spoil. I don't, you know, I was a single mother, was a single parent at the age of 4. Perhaps my daughter, I was a single parent, I was never in the picture. So I think I felt the responsibility as grandfather, and that was tough. That was really tough on her. Or her friends doing things that, like, for instance, my friends never have to drive the dish. You don't live here with us. You and I live here with sharing, and I think it's concerned. I think I was tougher. I was just as loving, but that my role was to, I had no one to fall back on. I had no one to look to, for discipline. And I know that both of you in some ways had the same, but with my grandson, I can be more relaxed. He pays much more. I'm his favorite grandmother. I'm not just was like, but he, and this is thanks to her as well. And I'm going to ask you in a minute about help your grandchildren to see how do your grandchildren view you. And I know that Samantha has had a great deal how Reese sees me, and Reese sees me as superhuman. He knows, he totally believes that I'm magic, which of course I am. So how do your kids help in that way? How do the relationship between you and your grandchildren, or do they hinder without even hinder? So Frosty, why don't you answer first?
No, I think they both help because they appreciate what I do to ease things for them, because I take on a lot. I've looked after them when Jodie was at work and Peter, so I think that's something that they've always appreciated, and they've made that known to the kids, and the kids do as well. So that's nice that they do that. Yeah.
And you think that cements your,
Yes. Yeah. I think kids pick up on things anyway. So if the parents' attitudes, they pick up as well. So I do think that helps a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. KW, what about you? Do you think that, because you've got a grandson with one daughter and a grandson with another daughter, right?
Yeah.
Help your relationship with your grandkids, or do you think they hinder?
Oh, no, there's no hindering at all. No, it's quite a good team, I think. I hope I'm not assuming too much. I spend quite a bit of time helping out when they're at work or when something's happening, and with my eldest grandson, we've got a nice relationship. He's 10 now, and we have conversations on the way to school in the car or coming back, and he fills me in on hypotheses and certain things he's thinking about, and his latest crush, and that sort of nice, easy chatter just absolutely gets me, and it's joyful. And he's bright and he's funny, and he tells me truths, which is great, about how dirty my car is and how he can't stand it. That sort of thing. But the baby is very much his own little man already, and he tests everything to its limit. I'm older. So it's wonderful. I feel as if I'm a bit of a filler sometimes. It's nice.
Now to the chat room. I didn't ask Chris if there's anybody not having this conversation all by ourselves, but I hear just recently, which is sort of what made me think about this subject that we're talking about now. I'm not allowed grandchildren, or I'm estranged from my children, therefore I'm estranged from my. I mean, we three, we find we're so fortunate, right?
Yeah, very much.
Yeah.
in what we
We're
have.
blessed in that sense, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. But there are so many people out there who have grandchildren who they're perhaps never even seen. And I know that perhaps this are amongst those people who perhaps don't have it. I mean, you know, when I think about we three ships with our kids and with our grandchildren, which are great, but there are so many through jealousy or because they don't like to be told what to do, or they don't want somebody's advice, or you get you know, or a father or grandmother or grandfather who think they know it all and so on. I mean, there are lots of different scenarios where people don't have. I want to go to the chat room and see what people are saying in the chat room, but then I'd like to sort of, because you know we're sort of halfway through the show already, but you knew of a situation where someone you knew was grandkids, or there was strange, parents or grandparents were kept away from their kids and so on. In your mind, of course, we don't know the different scenarios. What would your advice be to someone who perhaps doesn't have? I'm going to come back to that, but let's go to the chat room. Chris.
All right, Rosemary. Starla Tech, who is from California, has been keeping up with each of your questions, so I can read back 3 of the answers that they have provided. So initially, she said, or he or she said, my mother abandoned me as a baby and has been a toxic mother and self-destructive for the most part. My paternal side raised me, and my grandmother was, still is, and will always be considered my mother. Do you want the next comment or to answer that one?
Well, first of all, I can say that of the 3 of us, I think it's fair to say I'm the other toxic mother. I know what that means. My mother, some look back, it would have been better had she abandoned us, because we wouldn't have had to deal with stuff. Of course, that would have created, issues of abandonment. I love the fact that this lovely lady is talking about the grandmother who was her mother. And I think sometimes what we think it might be the worst thing that happened to us, like the abandonment of a mother, gives space and makes room for someone else to come in there we need from them. I know that my mother, certainly for anybody else, and in fact she was very jealous of anybody who came in to the house who showed, certainly to me and probably to a couple of my sisters as well, and didn't give room for somebody else to come in and show us love and affection. So to the next question that she has then.
Well, the next comment would be, grandparents are so important. I think each generation has something different and special to offer. I am so very grateful and feel extremely blessed to have my unconditionally loving grandparents.
Great. I love that. Okay, so who else? What other questions or comments do we have in the chat room?
Well, the last comment is also from the same person. What I learned from my mother's horrible example of a role model is everything I would never do, never say, nor ever treat my children in such a horrible fashion.
How not to be.
Well, how not to be, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, well, have heard me say, oh, I don't know, at least least 1,000. I am, and this lovely lady, I'm hearing what you're saying. I've written out this. I've said it. I actually once said it to a judge. I'm very, very grateful for the abuse of my parents, and that might sound odd, but I am very grateful for the abuse, and because they taught me how not to be. And if you're abused, if you are abused, then you will abuse that. Sort of. You put your abuse and your hurt and your pain and so on. But I can tell you, having experienced abuse and having experienced, if you're a loving person and if you love your kids, you know how it would never put that onto somebody else. So nature versus I think that those of you who use the excuse, well, I became an abuser, you need to take a step back and take a look at yourself. I don't think it's that you were abused. I think that all of the anger and frustration that you're feeling out onto those who are much more vulnerable than you, and you need to cut it out. Anyway, so I was very fortunate, and what is, she feels the same way. I'm grateful. I'm so grateful for the stuff that I went through, because I felt the pain of it and the tears of it and the hurt of it. How would I know what it felt like? How would I know that there was a different way? I think that's what we have to take from that. Any other comments?
No comments at this time, Rosemary.
Okay, so why don't we go, the two of you, people who are, we know that there are grandparents who are kept away from their kids. We know that there are parents who drive their kids away from them. It's not their kids away. It's it could be their parents sort of away from toxic energy. But what would you say, not knowing this enough for me to answer questions, and then, and as people are listening, get on. This is going to be your last opportunity to make comments or ask questions, because once I've listened to Kay, the two Ks, about what, add any help, any advice, any comment for anybody out there who, what would you say to someone who is suffering because they are the contact or the ability to love their grandchildren? You say to them, so get ready with your questions, because if there aren't any, we're going, the two Ks and I are just going to have a conversation with ourselves. So fingers moving in the chat room, please. All right. So who wants to go first? Frosty?
I think sometimes when relationships break up, children become weaponized and they're used as a stick to bash the partner with. And I think that's a sad thing when children are used in that way.
I think that is to describe what happens when you say weaponized. You're absolutely right. And I think even, I'm coming back, sometimes I love my daughter dearly, but occasionally you think she might hold it because she knows how much I love Reese and how much she wants to be a part of herself, unless she takes it away from me. Not that she would ever take it away from me. I think as parents and grandparents, we really want to do the right thing, and I tend to interfere. I know that, and sometimes Samantha can be, she'll say, no, you can't do this. And I have to respect that, which
That's
is
tough,
not,
isn't it?
but I do try to respect it.
Yeah.
So back to what you were saying. So you're saying that that kids they are.
Yeah, they're weaponized.
You're right.
But you can understand in some respects because people are hurting. And you just hope that in time they realise that themselves. But that doesn't always happen, which is sad. And the children don't always see that themselves, what's happened to them, till maybe a lot later. Yeah, I think it is sad. Yeah.
Any advice for anyone going through that situation?
Well, I think you can only talk to them and say that, you know, time is one of the best healers, really. And you only have to look at certain programs. You see people on the television and they talk about the backgrounds, and something's only a mistake if you fail to learn from it. So you have to learn from the things you do, and that way you grow. Yeah.
I think hearing you saying, and I said this to somebody yesterday, right? And I do say to students, I say this to my clients, I say this, occasionally I'll say it to students, but what I say is, would you rather be right
or happy? Mm-hmm.
A lot of people will say, I'd rather be right. And if you are one of those people who would rather be right, because you know that I have to tell you, if you're listening and you're hearing what I'm saying, you can always be right in your own mind, but you may never always be right to it. So, so I think that, what your is, would they rather be right or would they rather be happy? And if you're sensible and see where it is that you might have gone wrong or you might have misunderstood, made a mistake about someone, assuming that they meant one thing and in fact they meant something else, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because often what you say and what you mean isn't always what people hear.
That's right.
Sometimes you have to talk to understand where that disconnect's happened.
Yeah.
And I think you have to not only have to talk, you have to listen. You have to be prepared to listen.
That's right.
Do you have anything that you might want to say to someone who's going for, suffering with this stuff?
Are you talking to me or Kay Warburton?
KW.
Okay. I'm just going back to, are you right or are you happy? I think I must be more than often wrong because I'm usually happy. And I am not interested in being right. Not really. Not anybody else is right anyway. And if I stick to my right and nobody else likes it, then it only affects me. I don't worry about other people's rights. That's for them to sort out. As to when you were talking about the rifts in families, it's really dangerous, isn't it? And it's really tiring and wearing and a bit scary, all these negatives, because people don't know how to seal them up. They don't know, they run around worrying and spreading all sorts of disharmony between everybody. And the best thing I can think of doing is doing nothing and standing still and keeping my own ground and waiting till it all comes back, waiting till everything seals up and comes back again. And very often, I know a friend of mine who's got a huge problem in her family, and it's been going on a while, and it's nothing she's done. and she's completely on the sidelines waiting for it all to work out, and all she can do is sit and watch and not interfere, and it's so hard. And just keep the door open and have faith that common sense prevails, and keep hoping.
I think keeping the door open is important. Send Christmas cards, send birthday cards, phone call from time to time, even if they don't take the phone call, even if they tear up your Christmas, just persevere and keep on doing what you're doing, because that's what you're talking about. Keeping the door open is, the most important thing. It's very for a lot of people, because especially blame each other. Well, if she did this, or well, she did that, she said this and that, and so on. So easy to misunderstand what it is that people need. And this is going to be, well, maybe I think for this advice, and we're going to go back to the chat room. I hope you're typing in your questions or your comments. Know that when things become too much for me, and that has happened on a few occasions in my life, a great believer in handing the problem over. We'll talk to Grey Eagle, I will talk to God, I will talk to anybody else, whatever that is that you want to call it. And I get to that point of handing over. But if I get so down or so frustrated, sometimes traumatized by what's going on, and sometimes it doesn't matter, you can't change, you can't make any difference. And at this point, when you say or do is going to make a difference, but you would really like to make a difference, you would allow, what I generally do is to say to God, I'm handing it over. This problem is far too big for me. I don't know how to deal with it. I feel if I say any more, or if I interfere, I'm just going. So I'm handing it over. Now, handing it over, which a lot of people will find very, very, is once you hand it over, when you, whoever it is in the spirit world that you love or trust, or you're handing it over to God, or that God force, or handing it over to, you're handing it over because you have to have total trust, can sort it out far better than you can. The difficulty is you've handed it over, you got to step back, and you got to keep your mouth shut, stand back, and you got to trust. And no matter how much you want to interfere, no matter how much you want to, wait a minute, this, or should I do that? No, once you've handed it over, you've got to persevere, you've got to stand back, and you trust that the universe exactly what to do with this situation. But it's tough to do. Do we have any more comments or questions?
Violet says, hello, ladies. Lovely to listen in on your conversation this evening. I was only talking about the inherited pathology of behavior this morning.
Oh, right. Okay. Nature. Yes. Yes. Well, I think it's nurture, but sometimes it is purely to do with nature. If you have mean tendencies or selfish tendencies, see that nature come out in everything that you do, which might not be great. Okay, any other comments or questions we have.
Yes, Starla Tech says yes. Parents unfortunately do use their children as pawns, not even caring about how very damaging it is on their growing, impressionable children.
To make a comment there, because I think you said that people do these things and they're so frustrated. I don't think it's that they don't care what's happening to their kids. It's just that they're so in their own head that they bulldoze ahead. And I don't care about the kids. I think it's more about the anger and the needing to find an outlet. I'm sure you girls agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any more comments or questions?
No, that's it, Rosemary.
Okay. Well, that's right. So I'll go back to girls again. We're almost at closing anyway. Have any final comments that you'd like to make on this subject? I'm sort of thinking a couple of hours ahead. Well, it's Fridays. My grandson stays up longer. So I can expect my phone call instead of 8 or 8:15. I can expect my phone call to be around 9 or maybe even later. Depends what he's doing. It depends what he's doing with his mummy. But I'm already anticipating next conversation with my darling boy. So again, how very, very lucky I am. But we were not so lucky. So, girls, express what you feel about your own kids, your own grandchildren. You can talk about if you've got any other advice or whatever it is you want to say about this. Now is your chance before we close. So, who's going to?
Well, I think your children, they give you a headache a lot of the time, but they're also one of the best gifts you can ever have, and you're privileged to have them. And the same with your grandchildren. I think they're just a joy, really, a joy. Yeah.
I can't imagine life without any of them. I can't imagine how I could be who I want to be without them. And they're absolute privilege and fantastic. And even, even in rough times, fantastic. Not that there are many rough times. I'd have to search that one out. The grandchildren, just joyful. Just joyful.
I think, I think every day in every way, our children can teach us something if we're open to it. We should think that we know it all because we don't. And our kids can teach. I remember when my daughter was little and it was bath time. I can't talk what we were talking about, but I do remember at one point thinking, oh my, when I said that, which is not a good thing. So I had to check on, and I think that as parents and grandparents, we should always attempt time to time and to check who we are and how they see, because I mean, kids and grandkids, they're very honest and, we can learn so much from them. I have learned from Reese. I put this in the newsletter. Me, he just before he was going to play at Carnegie Hall. It doesn't matter if I win anything. It doesn't matter if I get any prizes. Just want to play. He said, I'm so excited to play at Carnegie Hall. Myself, afterwards thinking about, we're here on this earth, and sometimes the games are tough, and sometimes the games are easy, seem cruel, and sometimes they feel overwhelming. And whatever goes on, I think we, should bear in mind that here on this earth, let's play. It doesn't matter if somebody loves. What matters most is that we love ourselves, and we love ourselves or behaving in the right way. I think what matters is that we fight instead of misery. What matters in our lives is we have a great attitude, because that great attitude, when we play on this earth of ours, when we play in this life, really can find the joy and the special moments that kids, with our grandkids, but with our friends, and in every aspect. So I think, I try many responses to this newsletter, people saying how much they love me. It was so nice for me, but I'm not looking for that. I think that if you look for it, just play, do the best you can, just enjoy this life, do the best you can. Remember kindness, and remember what Grey Eagle tells us your world needs. And as grandparents, we know definitely how we children, and also to our grandchildren. So we hope being with us. Girls, do you want to have had a comment briefly, because we are at time? Thing you need to say that you have?
Been a pleasure to chat and see everybody. It's been good. It's been good to catch up.
Always.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been me. It's not often I get to talk to my friends from England, my closest friends. I love you both dearly. Thank you for doing me. And we're going to say goodbye to all of you. Thank you very much for joining. And until I see you again, until we see you again, 2Ks, please, everybody, have a very blessed rest of the day. And think of us, because when we go blank on your screens, chat. So please, everyone, blessed rest of the day, and have a very blessed weekend. Bye-bye.